What we're going to go over now is setting up your tools and then touching them off. On your tool holders, the thing that you have to keep in mind is that there's enough space between your different cutting tools so that when one tool's in here doing a cutting operation, the other tool is not back here crashing into your chuck, or this guy crashing into your chuck. Okay, so the spacing has to be pretty decent. On the gang tool post, the spacing between centers is 1.5 inches, which in general is adequate for any stock that you're going to have machined in your lathe. Okay, another part that I'd like to point out, I'm using a boring tool. I'm using it as a turning tool, but it's sticking out on the back side past the end of the cross slide. If you have a situation like this, then what you want to do is have your tailstock back as far as it can go, and then I would loosen the tailstock and actually pull the tailstock body back and tighten it in place, so that if you're at the Z home position and you decide to jog, the back side of your tool is not going to clip the spindle on your tailstock. Okay, so let's go through the tools here, touching them off. The first tool is my cutoff. Okay, so I'm going to go up to first I'm going to call up tool number 1. This is going to be tool number 1, tool number 2, tool number 3. So to call up your tool, you go to the F2, MDI, and you just punch in T1, the tool I want to use, and then M6, and enter. Okay. Once I do that, it'll show right up here, tool number 1. So I would always look to make sure that the computer knows that that it has the tool that you think it has. So right now it's tool number 1. I'm going to exit out of this. I've got a piece of stock in here. This is 7/16 brass. It's in my chuck. So I'm going to jog my first tool into position. The very front of my part is going to be Z0. So I'm in continuous mode. The first thing when you set up your part off tool, okay, you don't want it sticking out too far. Okay, you also want to have your holder in a position where it can actually come this direction, which is towards your homing sensor, to where the point goes beyond center line of your part without touching your homing sensor and basically telling the machine that it just over traveled. So I'm all the way past the part right now, the way I have this holder positioned, so I know I'm good there. Okay, I'm going to go X plus, and just to show you, if I'm using my boring bar, the way it's set up right now, and I come in and I do a turning operation, okay, you can see that my cutoff blade back here has enough clearance to where even if I came into the middle of the part, I still have clearance between my part off blade and the chuck. I also have clearance between my 82-degree turning tool and the chuck. Okay, so this is the spacing that I'm talking about that you have to take into consideration before you start machining your part. Okay, so we'll go back to tool number 1. Okay, and I'm in continuous rapid mode, and it's going pretty fast. So I'm going to bring my feed rate down some, and that's a little more manageable. Okay, you can either use a piece of shim stock. Okay, at this point I would go to step mode and 10,000ths. Right now I'm within 1,000, or I'm less than 10,000, so I would click on 1,000ths and I would come in until I touch with my shim stock. The other way is you can turn on your spindle and actually move it until it actually makes a cut, which is what I'm going to do right now. So I want to turn my spindle on, go back to F2, 800 sounds fine, clockwise. I'm going to go back to my jog screen. I'm still in step mode. I'm at 1,000ths per touch. Okay, now I'm going to move it in. Right now I can hear it touching. You'll always hear it before you see it. So right now it's touching. I'll go one more thou. Okay, so that's a touch right there. Right now I'm going to turn off my spindle. So I went back to the F2 and just hit spindle stop. Okay, right now what I'm going to do is go to the F4 Tools and Offset screen. I'm going to double click on tool number 1. Okay, up at the top I can give it a name, and I'm just going to call it Cut Off. So that's my cutoff. Right now for Z, it shows nothing in there at all. If you had numbers in there already, it would show whatever your last value was. Right now, when I'm touching the part, all I do is I go in and I just hit the 0 for the Z offset. 0, and it puts in my machine number, which is from my machine home position to where that tool is right now touching the part. I'm gonna go down here and hit save. Oh, okay. All right, before I do that, MASSO, you have the ability to tell for each tool, tell it whether it's on the front side cutting or on the back side cutting. Okay, so this tool is a back side cutting tool, so I want to touch this. I check it, and now it changes to tool on back side, and you can see the arrow representing the tool has now moved to the back side of the part. It's important that you define whether it's front side cutting or back side cutting. So I'm going to hit save right now. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my jog screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jog it so that it's inside the front of the part, and I'm just going to move in until it makes a cut. Okay, so right now on jog mode, I'm going to go to continuous, Z plus, X plus, that gives me clearance. Okay, I'm just inside the part there. I'm going to creep in. I'm going to go to step mode, and 10. Okay, all right. Now I'm going to turn my spindle back on again. I'm going to go to step mode at 1000, so I'm going to step it in until it actually makes a cut on the outside of my stock. So I'm going to go back to MDI. I'm going to turn my spindle back on. I'm going to go back to jog, still on step mode in 1000s. I'm going to step in, up right there. There's only a thou off. Okay, spindle stop. So I just made a cut, and you can see this is rough stock, so it's cutting on half of the stock and not on the other. So it's not exactly at 0.4375, but close enough. You can move that in with your wear compensation. So I'm going to go back to F4 now. I'm going to double click on my cutoff tool. Okay, so on the X it says test piece diameter. So what I'm going to do is punch in 0.4375. Okay, and then I'm just going to hit touch. Okay. Now when I hit save, okay, and it's got my Z number minus 11.354 and my X number of 0.411. Okay, so I'm going to jog out of the way. I'm going to go back to continuous. Okay. I'm going to move my rapid speed up to 100%. Okay. Now, before we touch the rest of the tools off, I want to show you how you can check to see if your numbers are correct. So you can proof it to make sure you haven't made any errors. Okay, the first thing I want to do is we're going to go to the F2 MDI screen and call up the MDI command page. Okay, it already knows I'm on tool 1. It's got the numbers in for the X and for the Z axis. So right now I'm going to tell it G90, which is absolute, on the conversation line. G90, oh, missed my 0. G00, Z 0.1. Okay, so if my numbers are right, this blade should go up 100 thousandths in front of my part. My X-axis is away from the part, so if I did something wrong and it continues to go, I can hit feed hold, either here, or the E stop before it crashes my chuck. Okay, whenever you type in, make sure you look up here on your screen and see that it actually has the correct code. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. And if I look at it, that looks like 100 thousandths in front of my part. Okay, the next one I'm going to do is tell it to go to X0, which means the tip of my cutting edge should go to the center of the part and I'm 100 thousandths in front of it. So I'm just going to type in X0.0 and hit enter. And there you have it. So my touch off was correct for that tool. It's all looking good. So I'm going to exit out of this. I'm going to go back to jog. It's in continuous, and I'm going to move to tool number 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the computer knows that I'm working with tool number 2. So I'm going to go to the F2 MDI screen, MDI, and punch in T2, M6 for tool change. And it shows tool number 2. This is a boring bar, but the way I've got it set up to use is I've got it reversed. It's on the back side, and I'm going to be using this as a facing and turning tool, roughing turning, or roughing facing and turning, and my 80 as a finish turning, just to show you some options that you have as far as the tooling goes. Okay, so what I want to do now, this one is also cutting on the back side. Okay, I'm going to touch off the Z. I'm going to define it as a backside cutting tool, touch off on the backside on the X, and teach this tool. So we go to the tool offset page. Okay, I double click on tool number 2. Okay, for tool number 2, I'm just going to call it a 55. 55 space, it will go BS for backside. Okay, and I'm just going to hit save. Oh, hold on, let's go again. Okay, I also want to define it as a backside cutting, so I'm just going to check the box there, and now it says tool on backside and the arrow's flipped. I'm going to hit save. Okay, now I'm going to jog my tool into position where it can make a cut. I'm going to exit out of the MDI. I'm in jog mode, continuous. I'm going to bring it in close. I'm going to bring in the X towards me, X minus. I'm going to slow the jog feed rate down, move away a little bit so I can see how fast it's going, move towards it. Okay, that's looking pretty good right there. My tool's inside the diameter on the face. Okay, so now I'm going to go to step mode, and it's at 10 thousandths increment. I'm going to hit it once. Spin my part, it's not hitting yet. Okay, now I'm going to go back to MDI. I'm going to turn the spindle on again. It still has the 800 in there. Spindle clockwise. Now I'm going to go back to my jog screen. I'm going to change from 10 thousandths to 1 thousandths. I'm going to start jogging in until I hear the tool cut. Okay, right there I've got touch. So I'm going to go back to my F2 screen, turn off my spindle. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my F4 tool screen. I'm going to double click on tool number 2. For Z offset, I'm just going to hit 0, and that just put the number in from my home position to that where that tool's touching. And hit save. Now I'm going to jog. Go back to continuous. Wrap it up a little bit. Okay, that's away from the part. So I'm on the back side. I'm going to come in close, and I'm going to be getting ready to touch in an area that's just past where my cutoff tool hit. I'm going to go into step mode and thousandths. Turn my spindle on. Go back to jog, F3. I'm on step and, 10 thousandths. That would have been bad. Okay, thousandths, and I'm going to start stepping in until it makes a cut. Okay, right there I've got a cut. Okay, stop. Go back to your tool 4 or F4 for tooling. Okay, and right now I'm going to punch in what the diameter of that stock is, which again is 0.4375, and I'm going to hit touch. Then I hit save, and now it's got 2 inches 102 thousandths for my position for that tool on the x-axis. I'm going to go back to jog, continuous. I'm going to move away a bit from the Z, X and Z, and I'm going to position my next tool. So this one is going to be MDI again. It's tool 3, T3, M6 for tool change, enter. And you can see it changed to tool 3. I'm going to exit, and I'm going to jog, F3, jog page. I'm going to jog my tool into position. We're in step mode, 1/1000ths per increment. I'm going to turn on the spindle. Back to jog, and start stepping in. Okay, I've got a touch right there. Okay, I'm going to go back to F2 and turn my spindle off. Go to my tools. It's on tool 3. Now I'm going to touch on tool 3, double touch. Okay, and this guy is an 80 space, and we'll say front side, FS. I'm going to touch 0 for my Z. Lost that. Okay. 80 space FS 0, and it's already showing front side, which it is cutting. It'll be cutting front side, so we just leave that. Save. I'm going to go to jog. Now on my jog, continuous. I'm moving away in the Z, moving away in the X. Right now, it doesn't know where my X is, but it knows where my Z is. So let's say I want to touch a position that's exactly 200 thousandths past the front of the part. I go into MDI, it already knows it's tool 3, and I go G90, G00, Z minus 0.2. Because it knows where my Z is, it just moved to minus 0.2. So now I'm going to touch it off at minus 0.2, which should be a clearance. Let's make it minus 0.3. Z minus 0.3. So now I'm going to exit this. I'm going to go back to jog. That was just to show you how to use MDI to position it once you've got numbers in there. Something else on this, if I hit increments, okay, it's going to change the increments to green, but I'm not in step mode until the red continuous mode stops flashing. So step mode. So if you get ahead of yourself, just make sure you're not in step mode regardless of what you change here until it actually shows green there and the red stops flashing. I'm going to turn my spindle on. Go back to jog, step mode, I'm at 10. Okay, that's pretty close. I'm going to go to 1/1000ths per touch. there I've got a touch. Spindle off, tool setting, double click on 3, punch in 0.4375, 75, and touch. Save. So all 3 tools are set now in X and Y. I'm sorry, X and Z. I'm going to go to jog, continuous, I'm going to move it away. I'm going to move my rapid feed rate up. So that's it, all my tools are set. One more thing on your tool offset page. For all of your tools, when you click on them, it also has Z wear and X wear. So if I want to shift my Z in more or my X in more, regardless of what side your tool is on, whether it's a back cutting or front cutting, towards the center of the stock is always a minus direction in your program, not in your jog, but in your program. So if I just made a cut on this and I want to go in 1/1000ths more, even if it's a backside cutting tool, which tool number 1 is, on the wear, I would leave it as minus 1/1000ths. And then I would hit save. I'll do this one. On the Z axis, minus is towards your headstock, plus is towards the tail stock. So you can use wear compensation. Obviously, I didn't touch all the way around on my stock, so the chances are pretty good that the 0.4375 that I put in there might actually be a diameter of 0.44, 0.45. So I'll make my first cut and then I'll use the wear compensation to move it in whatever amount my diameters are off, or however further I want to go on my Z face. So this is one of the nice things about the MASSO control, because you can tell it backside or front side. On different controls, if my tool is on the backside and I wanted to move it in, I would be moving in the minus direction on the backside to move it in, and the plus direction to move it away. Whereas my tool that's on the front side would be moving towards the minus direction, or be moving towards the plus direction to go towards the center of the part in the minus direction. Because you're distinguishing what side of the stock your tool is on, all moves towards the center of the part in the X are minus moves, all moves away are plus moves. Then just hit save, and that pretty much covers your tool setting.